I'm Joe Mooney from the East Wall History Group, and we're here in the Sean O'Casey Theatre at East Wall for the inaugural Sarah Lundburg Summer School on the topic of Kathleen Lynn, a truly radical woman. Sarah Lundburg was a member of the East Wall History Group, also a member of Alternative Vision's Oral History Group, and involved in very many other projects. Tragically, this time last year, Sarah passed away, which was a great shock to all of us. She was involved in many projects, and a lot of those projects went unfinished. She had a lot of great ideas for work we could do in the future, which obviously she's never going to be involved with. So for many of us, it was a real personal loss to our friends and to our family, but again, we were also very conscious that there was a great body of work potentially gone that she would have been involved with. So we decided to honour her memory with an annual Sarah Lundburg Summer School. So this is the inaugural one, and the topic we went with was Kathleen Lynn, because Sarah, along with others, had a great plan for a major publishing project to look at the life and the legacy of Kathleen Lynn. Yeah, we were really lucky in that a great selection of speakers volunteered or were prepared to take part. So Kathleen Lynn had an amazing life. She went from the daughter of a Protestant clergyman to being a revolutionary in 1916. She was a suffragette, a member of the Irish Citizen Army, and she of course founded St Ultan's Hospital in 1919. So for all those different aspects of Lynn's life, you could probably do a day on each one of them. So we had to try and capture so many different elements of this woman's life in one afternoon. So we're just really lucky that so many people who are expertise in particular fields of her work were prepared to give us the time and take part today.
The photo originally is in black and white, which is why I left the black and white in the background to kind of keep it associated with it. But I thought that colour would get a lot more of her personality through in the painting, which is why the purples and the pinks in her face are so dominant in the painting, because I feel that represents her feminine side, and she was a very strong woman in a very male-dominated society at the time. And I just wanted to get that through as the strongest feature of the painting, and I hope I did it justice. I felt that the arm coming across was a very nice feature in the photograph, because she's kind of acting like she's protecting the kids from what's going on around as well. So I wanted to make sure I got that right too. And the blanket as well, the way she has it wrapped around them, it's like she's almost like their ma. But the blue as well is like it's a contrast between the pink. So has the feminine sides and the male sides as well. Like she's a protector, but she's a ma as well.
A socialist, a feminist and a nationalist. Kathleen Lynn was born in County Mayo, and she was the daughter of a Church of Ireland clergyman. As girls of her class, her middle class, were educated, she was sent to Alexandra College in Dublin, where she received an excellent education. She always seemed from a very young age to want to do more than what girls of her class usually did, which would be get married and have children. So she begins to train as a doctor at the Catholic University Cecilia Street School of Medicine, which becomes the UCD School of Medicine later on, and she qualifies as a doctor. However, Kathleen also was very much a suffrage activist. She was involved in first wave suffrage activism, joined the Irish Women's Suffrage and Local Government Association and is on their executive. But she also joins the Women's Social and Political Union, the British militant suffrage group led by the Pankhursts. So she said she was admiring of the militancy of some of the suffragettes of the early 20th century.
I'm here to celebrate the life of Kathleen Lynn, and just as an activist myself involved in the struggle today, what's really interesting is how in many ways things certainly haven't gotten as much better as we would want. In fact, in many ways it's actually getting worse. We would have seen in her time enormous poverty, and she would have dedicated her life to fighting against that. But we've actually seen now, especially in the crisis with the advent of austerity, things seem to be regressing in the same way, and there's really a need for a strong kind of female voice to put a stop to it, really. And I think Kathleen is pretty much the greatest inspiration you could look at for that, because we don't have a lot of them, and certainly not in history they're written out.
My story is that for many years I was the custodian of Kathleen Lynn's diaries, they came to me through my father, who was close to Kathleen Lynn, especially in her latter years. She left him the diaries for safekeeping, and in due course when he died they passed to me. Then in due course, after a few years, I passed them into the care of the Royal College of Physicians, where they're safely looked after, and I understand have been useful in providing valuable material towards biographies and a documentary about the life of Kathleen. And personally, I'm just very proud to be associated with such a great woman who contributed so much to the early part of the development of the state in Ireland.
The SS Hare Commemoration, Sir John Rogersons Quay, October 5th, 2013. I knew I was late when I heard the ship's horn, that full throated and solemn voice expand and fill the sky, containing the importance of the occasion within the space it reached. Within the close embrace of that spherical sound, I raced as fast as I could go, to the docks, to the source, to the commemoration. I wondered as I raced if there was an echo of a ghost memory, another woman, also late, heralding an older call. To her perhaps a siren, a reminder, a beacon of hope and hopelessness. All at once as she rushed, if she did rush, with the knowledge that she may have missed a chance of food. Not for her the fun of the commemoration, a day out in the sun, band playing, friends heading to the pub afterwards for a drink. It is for her though, and for her children, and her children's children, that I commemorate today. And though my haste followed in the wake of her ghost memory of desperation, it is for her too that I laugh. For it is for celebrations like this that they fought and died.
I'm here to support what I see is an essential input from communities into the celebration and commemoration of our radical history, in particular the 1916 Rising. I don't believe we can leave it to officialdom, and I certainly don't trust the current government with their anti-republican agenda to properly celebrate our history. I think it's absolutely essential that groups like the East Wall History Society and other groups citywide contribute from the ground up, so that people in the localities have something to actually look towards, to resonate with, as opposed to a top-down approach.
On the day of the Rising of Easter Sunday, she goes with the Irish Citizen Army towards City Hall and towards Dublin Castle, and is with the City Hall Battalion during the Rising. She actually is in charge of it within a few hours, because of course the Commandant, Sean Connolly, was shot dead within a few hours of the Rising starting, and it is Lynn who offers the surrender of the City Hall Battalion to the British early in the week, because of course City Hall was an undefendable outpost, and with the battalion, with the members of the City Hall garrison, she's taken off to Ship Street where they're held. That's part of the Dublin Castle complex, where they're held for the week, and then taken off to Richmond Barracks, and then on to Kilmainham, and then Kathleen Lynn is banished to England, basically under regulations that say all enemy aliens should be sent out of Ireland, and she spends some time in England.
History is an incredibly interesting subject, it really is, and there's lots of schools of thoughts out there on how to deliver it, what to teach, how to teach it, and And I suppose recent research would be you'd be coming up across ideas about, you know, historical skills, historical thinking. Like one of the historians today mentioned about, you know, the mindset of people in the 1900s in comparison to the mindset of people now. Those ideas are big ideas in like teaching history to children.
I don't think that's particular to Kathleen Lynn. I think in general women don't seem to be as celebrated in history. I mean, if you look at Jim Larkin and James Connolly, that's pretty much all we ever go on about these days, especially in this decade of centenary. So I suppose if, again, as I said, I mean, the problem is with so much of the austerity that's been impacted now, it is affecting women. If you look at the lone parents cut, if you look at the withdrawal of funding to the likes of the Rape Crisis Centre, which are essential services, especially for women, you would think that we would draw inspiration from women like Kathleen Lynn, and we would, you know, use them and their quotes and their story as inspiration. The other thing about Kathleen that I think is really interesting when you look at today is her understanding of the need to be organised with women, be involved in women's groups and take inspiration from other women. And I really think we could learn a lot from that now. There seems to be a lot of interest in various issues, be it pro-choice or campaigning against cuts, but it's very rare that I think we see ourselves as a women's movement today as we did back then.
And she certainly campaigns to have the right to vote, the right for women to vote, to be included in the Third Home Rule Bill in 1912, which fails. She was very much also involved in social activism, and through her knowledge and friendships with people like Helena Maloney and with Countess Markovich, she is introduced to James Connolly and to the cause of labour, basically. She's a vice president at one stage of the Irish Women Workers' Union. And during the 1913 lockout, she worked in Liberty Hall and acted as a doctor and also as an activist. And it's here she met her lifelong friend and companion, Madeleine French-Mullen.
In 1918, towards the end of the war, there was concern in Europe about the spread of syphilis because of soldiers moving across the vast area of lands, and so many women had been reduced to prostitution, and it was a problem across Europe, across the world. And in Dublin, the county councils were being asked to do something to set up functions. For example, St. Stephen's Hospital, which was the hospital that treated people with venereal disease, was founded at that time in 1918. So they had various hospitals being founded in order to look after men and women who had syphilis. But Kathleen Lynn decided that the children and a committee of women wanted to get involved in it, and they choose to look after children between the age of birth and 5 who had congenital syphilis, and they wanted to take them away to a house of treatment and treat them. And the reason they wanted to do this is they decided they would zone in on children who were boarded out from workhouses, because those children didn't have a parent, a guardian. And at that time, an infant from the age of birth to 5, if it was in hospital, it had to be accompanied by its guardian. So these children didn't have a guardian, and they decided that they would set in motion buying a building where they could remove these children who were being boarded out with families and remove them to these hospitals for treatment. Now, they didn't exactly explain how they were going to remove the children from the workhouses, but this was the idea that they had.
The Mayor of Dublin campaigns to get her back to Ireland in 1918 because of the outbreak of the Spanish flu. Of course, this kills millions worldwide, and they really need Lynn's expertise, and particularly her connection with working class Dublin. And around this area, around Sean McDermott Street and this East Wall area, she inoculates many members of the Irish Citizen Army and their families against the Spanish flu, and saves many people whose descendants are alive today.
The flu epidemic kind of abated, and they had a building, and they were tied into a legal agreement with this Miss Rhodes. So they had to do something with the building, and they decided they would open an infant hospital. St Ultan's. And Miss Rhodes was one of the trustees of the hospital, but nobody on the board knew that she actually owned the building.
Starting with 2 cots and building up to a rather impressive hospital with about 90 cots. And she spends the rest of her life in St Ultan's, running it, on the Board of Governors, working with French Mullen and many other of the women that she had been involved with through feminism and socialism and nationalism, who helped her, who fundraised for her. Her biographer, Margaret O'Hogarty, said that St Ultan's was really a women's, a medical women's republic, where the women ran it. They were the doctors there, there were the nurses there, and they looked after, they dedicated their lives to providing medical care for the poorest of the poor in Dublin.
So Ethel Rhodes wasn't out of pocket, and it wasn't an act of charity, it was a business proposition. Yeah, one of the speakers today, Carmel Darcy, gave a wonderful paper on Dr. Lynn, and she read through her diaries, and in reading through her diaries, Dr. Lynn met a lady called Madeleine French Mullen around 1912 when she started working in Liberty Hall, and they struck up a relationship, and they lived together for 40 years, and in reading through the diaries, reading the language and reading the diaries, Carmel realised that, the significance of the relationship was a lesbian relationship.
And one of the important aspects, of course, was her relationship with Madeleine French Mullen and the recognition that women made companionships throughout their lives and worked together and lived together and were their emotional and political support systems. And so many of them helped each other, and it was a really radical period.
But Kathleen Lynn was very intensely private. So if anybody in her circle knew, it remained very tight. She would have been a very private woman.
She was a fighter and fought in the Rising. She got injured, which wasn't surprising. She became a doctor when women weren't allowed. She founded a hospital where kids went in crowds. Now, they worked really, really hard on these. One of the children said something that someone would pass by very quickly, but was actually really profound. And she was saying, you can never get to the bottom of history, can you? Because you can just keep digging and digging and digging and getting new stuff. That's a huge idea in history. And she has it at the age of 9, which is amazing.
1955.
She died in 1955.
Yeah, she was 81.
In lots of ways, the state that came about was one that they didn't really support or appreciate, but they did their best within that as well, particularly in terms of social activism, to make sure things were done for the poorest and the most vulnerable in society. And Kathleen Lynn was definitely one of those people.
My name is Tara Kearns, and I was asked to do a painting of Kathleen Lynn by the History Group.
Hi, my name is Stephen Wynne, and I would be a distant relative of Kathleen Lynn.
My name is Moira Murphy. I'm a trade union organiser and an activist.
I'm Matthews. I am a historian and playwright.
My name is Councillor Kieran Perry. I'm a local councillor, a local community activist, and the current Deputy Lord Mayor of Dublin City.
My name is Mary McAuliffe, and I'm a historian working in UCD Women's Studies.
Okay, my name is Katrina. I'm a teacher in St Joseph's Co-Ed in East Wall.
And as Jane Connolly said, she was the best of them all, which I think, yeah, that's probably true.